Hi everybody.
Hi everybody. I hope you bundled up because today we're actually going to the coldest place in the entire world. Where are we going?
Antarctica.
We're going to go to Antarctica and we're going to discover the birds, specifically the penguins that live in Antarctica. But I have a question for everyone. I wonder if anybody knows where else do penguins live. They don't just live in the South Pole in Antarctica. They live other places as well. And I'm wondering if anybody knows, if anybody would like to take a guess before we share that detail.
I will.
Don't tell yet. But what you can tell us is, Alexis, can you tell us the 6 characteristics of birds?
All birds lay eggs. All birds have feathers or wings. All birds breathe with lungs. All birds have bills or beaks. And all birds are warm-blooded.
That's right. So all birds have those characteristics. Do all birds fly? That's a trick question. That's right. All birds do not fly. In fact, we just kind of happen to come across a lot of the flightless birds as we've gone to these different continents. And today it's the same as well, that today we're also talking about flightless birds. We'll throw in a few little birds that do fly, but it'll be mostly our penguin friends. So does anybody have a guess of where else penguins live besides Antarctica? I'm still going to wait to hear some answers before we share that information.
Answer.
No, don't tell it.
The
Alexis, you little stinker. So we're actually going to go through, and I want to share kind of just a little brief summary of all the different penguins in Antarctica, and then we're only going to focus on 2, okay? And so you don't need to go to your page yet. So this was on a great website here. These are the 8 main penguins that are in Antarctica. We have the emperor penguin, the king penguin, the gentoo, Magellanic, the chinstrap, the Adelie, macaroni, and the rockhopper. Those are the main penguins that you'll see in Antarctica. Now, most of them will not be on the solid continent of Antarctica, but they're going to be in the islands that are north of Antarctica. The emperor penguin and the Adelie are the 2 that actually spend most of their time on the Antarctic continent, and those are what we're going to focus on a little bit later. So let's go ahead and talk about some baby penguins. You want to tell me where else do they live? Here.
I'll tell you. They live in Australia.
Remember, we learned about the little penguin that lives in the southern tip of Australia. And they also live, actually, I'll show you right here.
Africa.
Yep, the southern tip of Africa. And also South America. So here's a map of our world. There's Antarctica down at the bottom, and you would see all those little green dots. Those are islands that are called in the sub-Antarctic range, and they're islands that are north of Antarctica, and that's where a lot of the penguins actually live. But there are some in the southern tips of Australia, southern tip of South America, and also the west side of South America as well, and the southern tip of Africa. You want to see that, Alexis? There you go. So let's go ahead and read all about different baby penguins, and then we're going to focus on just 2. So here is a little baby gentoo penguin. Isn't he cute? He only weighs about 4.5 ounces. Isn't he sweet? There are about 17 kinds of penguins, and it really varies, different ideas. So most of them say 17 or 18. But then some will say up to 22 because they're making subspecies. But we're going to stick with the 17 or 18. But they all lay
eggs.
Eggs, that's right. They all lay eggs. But like some penguins, like the emperor penguin and the king penguin, only will lay 1 egg. Whereas most of them will lay 2 eggs. Their little fuzzy chicks hatch like this little gentoo. And their parents have to feed them. All little penguins. No, there is not one penguin that is just born and can survive on its own. Here's a baby king penguin. He almost looks like a little teddy bear, doesn't he, with his little brown fur? So there's the little baby, and they are born with those really soft, downy feathers, but they can't go in the water because they're not waterproof. Oh, let's see, Sarah. She's guessing North America. And that is a good guess, Sarah, but you know what? All penguins live south of the equator. They're all in Antarctica or in the sub-Antarctic islands right above there, or the southern tips of Australia, South America, and Africa. So actually that's actually a myth. A lot of people think of in the North Pole that there's penguins. there are no penguins north of the equator. These ones are the macaroni penguins here. Penguins really spend most of their time in the water, but they do leave the water to build their nests and have babies. That's their main way. And I'll show you this again. There is the penguin range. You can see all the green spots are where penguins live. So there's none up in the northern hemisphere. They all are living in the southern hemisphere. See that? And then all those little green things are the islands, the sub-Antarctic islands. So their nest life, now not all their nests are the same. A lot will use pebbles and rocks. But like there's a little penguin we learned about last week in Australia. That little penguin's going to be in a little burrow. The king penguin and the emperor, they don't have a nest. They just use their feet. That is the nest. So here are some little baby emperor penguins. Aren't they cute? And each penguin has a unique sound. Isn't that amazing? That's how they can find the mates. The male and female can find each other because they'll find each other every single year when it's mating season. And even the babies, they have their own sounds. So penguins will eat different things, but the most common foods are what? What are the 3 most common foods for penguins? Do you remember?
Fish, krill, and squid.
That's right. Fish, krill, and squid are the most common, but there are some variety within them. Now, this is the Magellanic penguin, and you can tell it's got these different white and black stripes that are very unique to its species. So they have beaks, but do they have teeth?
Nope.
No, they don't have teeth. What do they have instead of teeth?
Technically, they kind of is teeth, all those spiky things in their mouth, but...
Well, here's actually a good picture of it. So they have these spines in their mouth. I'll try to put it up a little closer. They have spines in their mouth so that they can hang onto the fish, because otherwise the fish are very, very slippery. So they don't have teeth, but they do have those little spines inside their beak to hold onto the teeth. Yeah, the penguin's coloring, camouflage from predators. So can you explain that a little bit? Why do they have the black backs and the white bellies? Can you tell us why do they have a black back?
Well, the black backs, if the devil bird saw them from up ahead, then they wouldn't know what that black thing was. And if there was a leopard seal in the water, it would camouflage in the ice because it has this white belly.
That's right. So they're black and white.
White belly.
Yep.
Black.
There, she's got her penguin on. So that is great camouflage. And here's the Magellanic penguin. You can tell it's got that pink around its eye. So it's interesting how each penguin has something just a little bit different that makes them unique. But we're actually going to focus on 2 main penguins, the 2 that live mostly on the Antarctic continent. If you have your My Animal notebook, you're going to turn to page 41. Page 41, we're going to write on the green side and you're going to draw on the white side. So we're going to write at the top of the page. Oh, yeah, see, cool. She meant the North Pole. I know, and that's a common misconception. A lot of people think that there's penguins at the North Pole, but there aren't. There are no penguins that are north of the equator. So that was kind of something fun. We studied Antarctica and the penguins about 3 years ago. So we learned a lot about penguins a couple of years ago, and we just learned a little bit more now. So we're going to write Penguins of Antarctica. So it'll say birds up there, but we're going to write the Penguins of Antarctica. And we're going to discuss those 2 main penguins. Even though there are 8 penguins that actually live in Antarctica, I want to share a couple of the sounds. This is just it's a 2-minute video that shares what each of the 8 penguins of Antarctica look like and what they sound like. There's the king penguin. There's the baby king penguin. You can actually go visit there. There's the Magellanic. Yep, and there is the rock hopper. Now the rock hopper has the feathers that come off like eyebrows. And that's how you can tell the difference between rock hoppers and macaroni. There's the gentoo. The gentoos are around at what they call the Penguin Post Office. It's in the north part, some of the sub-Antarctic islands. There's our emperor penguin. That's one we're going to be talking about today. They're the only ones that stay year-round on Antarctica because the winter's so cold there. And there we have our macaroni penguins. So as you can see, their crested feathers are more at the center of their forehead, like the call it macaroni hat. And then I think this is our last penguin here. The Adelie. So the Adelie is the most common of all of the Antarctic penguins. All of the Antarctic penguins. And that's another one we're going to talk about because it also spends most of its time on Antarctica. They do, like during the winter, they kind of spend their time out in the water and the icebergs just right outside of the continent. So let's go ahead and get started writing down some facts. So you have your Penguins of Antarctica, your title, and then we're going to do things a little different. We're actually going to write down the Emperor and the Adelie. Adelie. I keep wanting to call it Adelie, but it's Adelie is how you pronounce it. And then I want you to draw a line between the two. So Emperor is spelled E-M-P-E-R-O-R. Adelie is spelled A-D-E-L-I-E. And then I want you to draw a long line on your paper. We're going to separate the two, and then we're going to give facts, and we're going to compare the two. Those are our two main penguins that actually will stay year-round in Antarctica, or like I said, the Adelie will go just right off the coast. They'll actually spend their winters in the water and on the floating icebergs and such. So let's start with the Emperor penguin, he's the king of all penguins. So the Emperor the first fact you can write is the Emperor is the largest penguin. They're not just black and white. They have just a little bit of yellow and orange around their feathers and kind of like a reddish color on their bill. So have you ever seen a penguin? You've probably seen some at zoos, I'm sure. Well, they look like they're dressed in tuxedos. They all have the black and white, but they all have a little bit things that are different about them. And they can't fly, but they waddle around on the land, but they're really, really good swimmers. All penguins live south of the equator. There are 7 different species. The Emperor penguins are the biggest. So that's going to be one of your facts, that the Emperor penguins are the biggest penguins. And then we're going to write down how tall they are. They can be up to 45 inches or almost 4 feet. So you wouldn't write 4 feet because they're not quite 4 feet, but they can be up to 45 inches. So on your fact sheet, you're going to want to write up to 45 inches is how tall they are. Then we're also going to write how much they can weigh. They can weigh up to 88 pounds. So that'll be another fact. They are up to 45 inches tall and they weigh up to 88 pounds. So think of that. That's more than Alexis weighs and probably more than a lot of you weigh. 88 pounds. That's a lot. I think I was probably 4th or 5th grade by the time I weighed 88 pounds. But I was always pretty tall. But that's pretty big when you think of it. So imagine a penguin that you could see eye to eye with the penguin. Wouldn't that be kind of crazy? Looking right eye to eye with the penguin.
I would ride it when it does its belly slide thing.
Yep, and that's actually called tobogganing, when the penguins go on their bellies and slide down, just like how we would ride on a toboggan. And they live only in Antarctica. That's another thing. The Emperor penguins will live nowhere else on Earth, only in Antarctica. They live year-round on Antarctica. Antarctica, as we mentioned, is the coldest place on the Earth. The temperatures there can drop to negative 76 degrees. Woo! And the wind can blow 124 miles an hour. Isn't that crazy? Well, during the winter time, the sun doesn't set actually for 2 whole weeks. It's completely dark at the South Pole. That's pretty crazy, huh? So there's a lot of really cool things to learn about Antarctica, not just the Emperor penguins. Antarctica is a fascinating place. And in fact, there's a lot of great documentaries about penguins in Antarctica. But we will caution you, they show the circle of life. They are prey and they have predators. It actually made us cry a couple times, didn't it? So you do have to be careful, but there's one called the Penguin Post Office that features the Gentoo penguins. There's the March of the Penguins, which features the Emperor penguins. And actually Disney just put one out, I think it was 2019, that's just called Penguins. And it's about the Adelie penguins. And it's pretty cute. It's a lot of humor in it. But again, it does have some of the sad parts too of just the circle of life and how things get eaten. Well, don't tell them what happens, but yeah, it does have some sad parts on it, just to caution you and warn you about that. So we learned about this with other birds. Preening will clean its feathers. It tends to be right at the base of the tail is where it can gather the oil, and it uses that oil to kind of slick all over its feathers to make them waterproof. And the emperor penguin actually has 4 layers of feathers, where other birds will have 2 or 3 layers. But because it's meant to be out in that winter, that cold, cold winter, it'll actually have 4 layers of feathers. So here we go. Here we talked about the tobogganing. Here are some emperor penguins tobogganing over the ice. So the penguins will paddle with their flippers and steer with their feet. That's how they swim. They also kind of do that on the ice when they toboggan. So they're pretty fast swimmers. They can swim 9 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. And another great fact is that the emperor penguins can dive deeper than any water bird, not just any penguin, but they can dive the deepest of any sort of diving bird. They can actually dive deeper than 1,800 feet. Now, 1,800 is 1,800, 1,800 feet. That is really deep. That is really deep when you think about it. That's another great fact to write down, is that the emperor penguin can dive deeper than any other bird. So they only feed in the ocean. And Alexis, do you remember what they eat? We actually heard it in the other book too. What are some of the things they like to eat?
Fish, krill, and squid.
That's right. So you can write they eat fish, krill, and squid. We'll compare that with the Adelie as well. So this is kind of how they court. Right before they mate, they court. And it's kind of cute. It's cute to see because they'll kind of bow their heads up and down. They flap their little wings at each other, and they'll mate for life. So the male and female, they'll find each other every mating season, and they'll have just one egg. And they'll bow. It's so cute to see them. They kind of bow, and it's almost like they do this little dance when they're kind of finding each other, either for the first time or even when they find each other again. And the interesting thing is how they can find each other again is we talked about that cry, that sound they make. Even though their sound is similar to the other emperor penguins, they can actually find their mate just by the sound, which is so cool. So they have to travel 50 miles. I want you to write that fact down, so we're going to address that with the Adelie penguins as well. So the emperor penguins will travel 50 miles to have their babies, 50 miles inland. So that's like 50 miles from the shore. So imagine a penguin with how it waddles. I wonder how long it would take them to get to 50
Probably
miles.
Like a year.
Yeah, that's a long time. Like if we walked, we used to do a walkathon at my school to raise money, and the most I ever walked was 25 miles, and it took me 8 hours to walk that 25 miles. So imagine a penguin, and I was walking fast. I even actually ran a little bit. I ran a little, I walked a little. So imagine just a little short waddle, how long that would take to get 50 miles.
Probably a year.
Yeah, not quite a year, but it is, I think it's at least a month that it takes them. So the little babies, they are actually born. We saw the king penguins have the brown little feathers. Well, the little emperor penguins are gray, and they have their very distinct faces where you can see the black and the white on their faces, which is interesting because as they get to be adults, their faces are all black. So I think the emperor penguin babies are some of the cutest. So once they hatch, the emperor penguins, the female lays the egg, but the male hatches the egg. So I want you to write that down, that the female lays the egg, but the male hatches the egg. So what happens is they travel 50 miles inland, and then the female will lay the egg, and then she very carefully, so let's see if we can be really careful. Pretend like you're the male. So put your little webbed feet up. So there's the little penguin webbed feet. And very carefully, the female will transfer the egg onto the male's webbed feet. And then he has a brood pouch, which is this really big flap of skin that will cover the egg. And that's why they only have one egg. There's only really room for one egg there. So they don't have a nest. So that's another good fact to write down. The emperor penguin does not have a nest. They, in fact, just use their feet. And the tricky thing is while there aren't really that many predators out in the middle of the Antarctic in the middle of winter, they can roll off, and then the minute if they roll off that they die because they get frozen. Believe it or not, inside that brood pouch, they stay 97 or 98 degrees in negative 100 temperatures. That's just amazing. They can stay that warm on the feet. So the daddy holds them on his feet for 2 months. And then the mama goes back out to the water, 50 miles back to the water. She eats and eats and eats and eats, comes back 2 months later. And then generally by then the chicks are born and they're ready to eat. So then the mommy will, here's a little picture of when the babies are ready. Look. So then the babies are born. Look how sweet. And they are hungry when they're born. So then the mommy will feed them. And then by then The daddy's ready. Because has the daddy eaten that whole time? No, that whole 2 months he hasn't eaten. So he's starving. So he gets back to the water. The mommy stays with the baby. And then she also has the brood pouch. So then the baby will kind of go up into the brood pouch to stay warm. And then the daddy will go eat. And then they actually go back and forth about 6 to 8 times. They keep going back and forth, eating, bringing food back for the baby, eating, bringing food back for the baby. The mama takes turns and then the daddy. So they keep going back and forth for 2 months. And then finally, the babies are, getting old enough and getting ready to be on their own. So then the babies will form what's called a creche, which is also kind of what you call like a little nativity scene with baby Jesus. And so they'll form this little creche and the babies will all huddle together while both mom and dad go to the water to get more food because they really need to grow and get fat to help them get bigger and bigger. So they need both parents to be able to get them food. Their main predator are actually the leopard seals and the killer whales. What are we going to learn about the Adelie? Yes, the Adelie is going to be next. Yes, we're going to learn about the Adelie. They are cute too. I love them too. So the leopard seals and killer whales are the 2 main predators. And in fact, leopard seals are the only seals that will eat penguins. There were no other seals that do. At first I thought other seals would, but actually just the leopard seals. So let me show you just a few more pictures of the little emperor penguin baby. And then yes, we'll go on to the Adelie. And here's a picture like what Alexis mentioned about how that they have to regurgitate the food for the babies to feed them. So you can see that's a really good picture of that. So here we are, the little Adelies. So now we're going to write some facts comparing the emperor with the Adelie. Here they are. Look how cute. They're all dressed up. So the Adelie penguins look like they're wearing a fancy suit, most like other penguins. Their black feathers on their backs look like a jacket, and the white ones on their fronts look like a shirt. But one thing that's very distinct is look around their eye. Around their eye is like a very light blue, whitish feathered area. Now this is their size. You're gonna be writing down their size here. They're medium-sized penguins. They are 26 to 29 inches tall. So think about that compared to the 45 inches of the emperor penguin. So they are 26 to 29 inches tall, and they're up to 18 pounds. So think about how much smaller that is than the emperor penguin. And in fact, on this one chart here, this actually showed a little bit of the difference. There's the Adelie over here, and the emperor was the tallest one there, almost half the size of the emperor penguin. So I'll say those numbers again. 26 to 29 inches tall, up to 18 pounds. Oh, here they are in their icy world. Look at that one jumping. Cute. The Adelie penguins live in icy Antarctica, just like the emperors. They'll spend all their winter, though, on the ice and in the ocean. And then in the summer, they travel inland, away from the shore. So the main difference of how they live or where they live is that the emperor penguins will stay on the mainland all year, summer and winter, whereas the Adelie penguins will spend their summers on Antarctica, but then they spend right off like into the water. They spend most of the winter in the water right by Antarctica. Like all penguins, Adelies cannot fly, but they use their flippers to swim. They can swim 185 miles in just one day. And guess what they eat? Same things. So we're going to write this down. They eat krill, small fish, and squid, just like the emperor penguins. They have the same diet. Krill, fish, and squid. The Adelies may swim 185 miles in one day. 185. Now they can swim much faster than they can walk, of course. So in the summer, the Adelies leave the icy shore. They travel inland to make their nest. Ooh, now we're going to walk how far they walk. They may walk up to 30 miles. So the emperor penguins went 50 miles inland. The Adelies go 30 miles. So that's a good thing to write to compare. 50 miles with the emperor penguins, up to 30 for the Adelie penguins. Here's another big difference between the two penguins. So the Adelie penguins will actually build a nest out of rocks. And that's actually the dad's job. So the male will actually build the nest before the female comes. He'll dig a shallow hole in the ground and then surround it with pebbles. Here's another difference is the mommy Adelie will lay 2 eggs. And both parents take turns keeping them warm. So there's a few more facts there that are different than the emperor penguin. The emperor penguin, as you know, doesn't have a nest. They just use their feet as the nest. So the Adelie penguin makes a nest out of pebbles and they'll take turns. The mom will sit on the nest for a little bit and then she'll go eat, and the dad will sit on the nest. So they'll take turns hatching the egg. The mommy does lay the egg, so that's the same for both. They both have the mommy lay the egg, but then the male and female will actually take turns laying on the egg and keeping it warm, so they can take turns, so they don't have to go so long without eating. Remember how that daddy emperor penguin, he has to sit there for 2 months without eating. That's crazy,
We'll
huh?
probably die if we haven't eaten in for...
Right. I think humans can only last about 30 days without food, but only 3 days without water. So we have to have water. But I think we can go 30 days without food. Well, most of us, unless you have a medical issue, of course. So those are some interesting facts. Make sure you write that down, that the Adelies, their nest is made of pebbles, and the male and female will take turns hatching the egg, whereas the emperor penguin is the daddy does it. That's similar to the emu. Remember how the emu, the female would lay the eggs, but then the daddy had to sit on them. But the main difference is the emu mama, she's gone for good. She doesn't come back to help feed them or anything. Whereas at least the emperor penguin, she'll come back and help feed and take care of the babies. So the eggs take about 35 days to hatch. The chicks are covered with fuzzy warm down. Both parents will watch and feed the chicks for about 3 weeks. So there's another difference. It takes about 60 days for the emperor chick to hatch. And it only takes 35 days for the Adelie penguin to hatch. And there'll be 2 of them too. So that's a huge difference too. 1 egg for the emperor penguin versus 2 eggs for the Adelie penguin. Oh, and here's a young one. So she's starting to get a little bit of her adult feathers. In a few weeks, the chicks will grow their waterproof feathers, and then they can swim and hunt on their own. The young Adelies stay in the sea or the ice for 3 to 5 years before they return to land. So they kind of hang out there for 3 to 5 years before they come back to the land. And here's something that's very similar too, that their predators that they have to watch out are the killer whales and the leopard seals. But again, on land, there really aren't any predators. Only the skuas. The skua is another bird that's their predator, but it's from the sky. That's why they walk or waddle 30 or 50 miles, because they're safe there. We're gonna flip it around so we can draw these adorable penguins. So we're going to draw both the emperor penguin and the Adelie penguin. Let me get us flipped around here. Oh, this is your favorite flipper. So look at I'm going to show them your cute little penguin shirt. Isn't that cute? Little penguin.
It looks like an Adelie penguin.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to flip around here. So here we have all our facts. See how she split it up from emperor penguins and the Adelie penguins. And then we've got the different facts on their size, what they eat. And on the opposite side, we're going to start drawing our penguins. We'll draw both of our penguins. All right, so penguin, well, let's go start with the largest one, the emperor penguin here. And what we'll do is we'll do a couple of the little diagrams too. So their belly, the easiest thing is to start with their belly. So we're going to draw, and you know what we can do? We can put one on a little iceberg out here. Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to turn my paper this way. You know why? Because I want to put my emperor penguin over here, and I'm going to put the Adelie penguin out on an iceberg out here. So the easiest thing to start is to start with a round oval belly. That's the easiest thing to start with your penguin. And then the emperor penguin, I'm going to kind of give him a little bit of a circle head and his long beak. And one thing that's significant about his beak is like right in the middle, there's like this red, there's like a red mark kind of in between. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of show you quickly how to color these, since there isn't that much to color on them really. So their heads are all black. And if you notice, the babies have a very different look too. And then we're going to draw a little bit of a black here. And then what they have is between the black and the white, they have like a little bit of yellow, which is kind of neat. So here we'll draw their long flippers and their webbed feet. And of course, they've got the largest webbed feet, and they've got 3 toes. They have to be nice and large to keep that baby nice and warm inside there. And we'll give them just their little tail hanging out here. So if you kind of want to shade like the black areas, which is their back and their flippers, and then their little tail down there. And then even actually their feet are also dark colored, whereas the Adelie penguins have like a lighter colored, almost like a peachy colored foot. And then on their heads as well, their head is mostly black with just a little bit of the, like a little bit of orange here that we're going to draw. So it's kind of like a little bit of a curve there. Let me see if I can get that, make sure I get that right. So yeah, it's a little bit of a curve there. And then there's their little eyeball there. There, so we're gonna label him Emperor, E-M-P-E-R-O-R. So that's the Emperor penguin. We can draw penguin too. P-E-N-G-U-I-N, Emperor penguin. And then over here, actually I'm gonna make like a little bit of, I'm gonna draw the Antarctica here. There's Antarctic ice, and then there's the Southern Ocean, and I'm gonna draw a little iceberg hanging out here. And I'm gonna put my little Adelie penguin over here. So the Adelie penguin is almost half the size of that Emperor penguin. So we're gonna draw an oval that's about half the size of that one. And then they also have the webbed feet with 3 toes. But luckily they don't have to use their toes for a nest because they'll build their pebble nest. There we go. So there's their little feet. We'll draw their flippers. And then the flippers they're dark on the outside and white on the inside. So we're going to show the dark part of their flippers. Then they got an all white belly. So I'm going to erase that because I decided to put it down a little lower. So there's their all white belly. And then their head is also all black, just like the Emperor penguin, but they don't have the yellow coloring. So we're going to draw their little head and their little beak. Oh, when we looked it up, we weren't sure if the baby penguins had egg tooths, and they do actually. And they're the Adelies have more of a darker colored. And then the significant thing they have is they have that whitish blue area around their eye. Also, the Adelie penguins are the most common of all the penguins too. So you'll see more of them. So there we go. We're going to draw his little. And then because there's not a lot of coloring, we're going to actually color these a little bit too. So let's label our Adelie penguin. And there's our little Emperor penguin. Aren't they cute? So we're actually going to do just a little bit of coloring since we have time. Just because they're pretty easy to color. So the Emperor penguin has that very significant, almost like a reddish, orangish kind of color right in the middle of in between their 2 beaks. And we're going to draw the rest is kind of more of a darker color there. And you could use black if you want to, but we just kind of have our pencils. And then their head, again, is mostly black. But they do have that, just that little bit. If you look there, see, look at their coloring. See how there's just like a little bit of like yellow and orange kind of right there. So we're going to take that, use just a little, I'm going to use a little bit of yellow and orange here and just give a little bit of yellow and orange shading here. And then even like along the top of them here, we're going to kind of just shade it like in between the white and the black. So look at that. See how that shades so nicely? And then with the Adelie penguins, they have more of like almost like a peachy pinky colored webbed foot. And then they just have that really significant, like that light bluish, almost white area around their eye for their Adelie. So there's our Adelie. There's our little Emperor penguin. Aren't they cute? All in Antarctica. Let's see. Alexis has the babies over here too. Well, we're so glad that you could follow us to chilly Antarctica to learn about these adorable little creatures, the penguins. We hope you enjoyed your time, and we'd love to see your penguin drawings.
There it is outside, cold Antarctica.
I know it is. We definitely, that's why it's not so bad actually wearing a hat. It's pretty cold here. In Michigan, we've had pretty much single-digit temperatures, so It almost not quite feels like Antarctica. Oh, and we looked it up. Actually the average temperature in Antarctica is right around 30 degrees, but that's the average summer temperature, whereas the average winter temperature is in the negatives, like negative 40 or negative 60, something really crazy like that. But we're so glad you joined us today. Bye. Oh yeah, so your color changing.
It is barfing out food for its baby.